Hello guys and welcome to my channel. What I'm going to do in this video is to show you how you can create a port channel in Cisco ACI. What I'm using here of course is Cisco ACI simulator, so I only can show you the ACI side of the configuration, but the other side of the configuration is going to be so easy. So let me show you the topology that I'm going to use, and I'm going to draw a very fast topology here. Let's say that this is going to be my spines, and I'm going to have only two leaves here just for the sake of simplicity. This is going to be the connections that I have between these two. So let's say this is S1 and S2. This is going to be L1 for leaf 1 and L2 for leaf 2. And because I'm going to create a port channel, what I'm going to say is two of the ports here, this one and this one, is connected to a server. Let's say this is an HP server, and on this HP server I have something like Windows Server installed. And Windows Server has a feature which is called NIC teaming. NIC teaming basically is something like creating an LSCP port channel on Windows side. So on this side, let's say that we have created NIC teaming, and these two interfaces are connected and bundled into one LACP port channel. But on the ACI side, that's going to be a little different. What should I do and how can I do that? First of all, let's say that these two interfaces are going to be Ethernet 1, let's say 21 and 22. So two interfaces of L1, which are Ethernet 121 and 122, are connected to LSCP. So the order of the creating of this port channel, and here I'm going to call it a policy, because whatever we do here, whatever command we want to configure here, is created through policies, and everything is going to be applied to the leaves, and then our configuration is going to be applied to the leaves through this. So the order that I'm going to do the things is as this. The first thing that I want to do is to create some, let's say, interface policies. So the first thing is going to be interface policies. And by interface policies, and again, when I say policy, you just think of something like configurations. So these are the templates which I'm going to create. Then I'm going to use these templates, these policies, and put them into something which is called interface, and let's say I'm going to write it in short, interface policy group. What I mean is, what kind of configuration do I need for these two interfaces? Do I need them, for example, to have CDP enabled or not? Do I need them to be in a bundle or not? Do I need them to be trunk or not? Do I need them to have a specific speed or not? So these are what I assume here as IPGs. Let me increase the volume a little bit so that you can hear me much better. Okay, after I have created this IPG interface policy group, what I need to do is to, this is one part, I need to create a set of interfaces, and of course here I need to have these two interfaces into one interface group. So interface grouping is going to be something like an interface profile. We call it an interface profile instead of interface group, but you know that in interface profile what I have is a bunch of interfaces. This interface profile, of course, is going to use something which is called interface selector to select the interface, but interface selector is technically a term just for an object which just selects the interfaces for us. So interface profile is going to be the next step. Now I'm going to say these interfaces which I'm going to select is from a specific switch. So the next step is going to be select the switches and create something like a switch profile. And again, for switch profile we have something which is called an object which is called switch selector, and this is going to select L1 for us. So that is going to go this way, right? Now that I have this switch profile and everything created, I need to go for the second part of the configuration, which is going to be the main part of the configuration. So here we are going to have a VLAN, let's say, pool. This VLAN pool is going to say what VLANs I'm going to assign to this 2 ports, which are going to be technically one port channel port. And is this going to be a trunk or an access port, or is it going to be an access port, a trunk port with the native VLAN on it? Technically what I'm going to say is I'm going to assign it a bunch of VLANs, but this interface can use any of those VLANs based on what we are going to have it. And then we are going to have this inside the domain. A domain is going to say what is connected to us, and my domain is going to be this Windows server, as a matter of fact, which is a physical server connected to us. So I will say this is a physical domain, and I'm going to call it, let's say, domain win server. Technically you should go with a better name, but just for the sake of simplicity, again, I'm going to go with this name. And finally, what I need to have is attachable access entity profile, or AAP, which is going to bind this domain to this IPG. What I mean is this domain is going to be assigned to these interfaces. So that is going to be the role of attachable access entity profile, or AAP. Okay, so let's start by doing the first part. So interface policy. This is my APIC simulator. So like I said, I'm doing everything on this APIC simulator. I'm going to log in here. Sometimes when you are using something like a simulated environment, this login is not going to be successful. What you need to do is to go here and log out and log in one more time, but that's okay. So everything is going to happen under Fabric tab. I go to Fabric tab and go to access policies, because here I am connecting to these servers, so through the access ports of the leaf. So that is going to be my access policies. If I want to change the interfaces which face the Fabric side, then I would go with Fabric policies, but here access policies. And then I need to start the policies first of all. Basically what you need to do is to go to interface policies, and then you can see something like an 18 different policies, which means that 18 different configurations that you can have on an interface. For example, you can say this interface can have CDP, this interface can have control plane policing, this interface can have firewall connected to that, this interface can have can be checked for miscabling. This interface can have encryption, which is going to be MACsec, and lots of different things. But here, what I'm going to do under this, I'm going to create a port channel policy. Now, the port channel policy should be created for each bundle separately. Like I said, although we are using policy again and again and again, but here for port channel that's going to be exception. So these two are going to have separate port channel policy. If I have another port channel, then that's going to have an extra policy assigned to that. Right now these are the default policies that is created by default by the APIC when we create it. I'm going to click on here and create a port channel policy, and I'm going to say, let's say this is going to be Win Server PC, or let's say PC Win Server. This is better. And here you can say what type of port channel you want to create. My port channel should be LACP, and because I want this to initiate the creation of the LACP port channel, so I go with LACP active. On the other side, Windows Server NIC Teaming uses LACP as well, so PHP is not going to be an option. And what number of links can you have in this port channel? Basically, I have 2 ports, so that's going to be okay. Here it says minimum is going to be 1, which doesn't make any sense, but that's okay. And the maximum is 16. I can increase the number of ports later for this specific port channel. Okay, so PC Win Server is going to be in LACP active mode, and the number of links are okay, so I'm going to create this here. And for the rest of the configuration, maybe I want to have CDP, so I have created something like CDP on, CDP off before I can use it. Maybe I want to have something like LLDP. I have created something like LLDP on, LLDP off before, and some other types of configuration that you might need on this port channel can be created here. Okay, now that I have created this part of the configuration, I need to create the interface policy group. So basically what I need to do is to go to here on the interfaces. I open interfaces. I'm going to click on this and twirl back the policy. I'm going to open interfaces, and because this is connected to leaf interface, I need to open a leaf interface. Then I need to create a policy group for that. I'm going to click on this, right click of course. This is going to be leaf access port. Mine is a port channel, so I go and right click on PC interface. If you have virtual port channel, then you go with VPC. Right click on PC, and I'm going to create a PC interface policy group. Clicking on that, and then it's going to be, let's say, PC win underline server, and that's going to be of course IPG, not PC. So let's say this is interface policy group, which is going to be my IPG. Now my IPG of course is going to have something like CDP policy. Let's say I'm going to have CDP on. I know I don't want to have LLDP policy, so I'm going to say LLDP off. But the most important part is going to be port channel policy. So for port channel policy, what I need to do is to select the port channel policy which I have created before. So basically I am applying all these commands on the interface. If I want to have more of these policies, I can just click on the one that I need and then let's say create it. For example, if this is an edge port, I can just go with the edge policy which I have created before. But these are going to be okay. So I go to the next page. On the next page it says there are some advanced policy which I need to configure if I want to. Of course, I don't really want to have anything. This means cabling is going to be useful for fabric policies most of the time, and that's okay. I don't want to configure NetFlow, I don't want to override anything, and I don't want to have any V distributed switch or resource group or anything. So I'm going to click on finish, and my IPG is going to be created and added to the list of IPGs here. That's IPG Win Server. So next thing is going to be the interface profile. This interface profile of course is going to select a list of interfaces. So going back to the configuration here, I would say let's close this one, policy group. I'm going to go to interfaces, under that leaf interfaces, and under that I have interface profiles. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to say create leaf interface profile. I select this, and I would say that is interface profile, so that is going to be IP, let's say, for the beginning of the name, and that is going to be the Windows Win server, as a matter of fact. So that is my IP Win server. Now, like I said, this is the interface selector. That's the object which is going to select the interface. Which interfaces are connected to my Windows Server machine? E121 and 22. So let's go back to here and click on this plus sign and go with that. So that's going to be PC Win Server. This is just the name, and the interface ID is going to be 121 up to 22. So 2 ports which are connected to here. Do I want to assign the interface policy group here, or am I going to assign it later? I can do it right now, that's okay. So I'm going to select IPG Win Server and assign it to this here. So I click on OK, and my profile is created, my selector is selected, the interfaces, and it has assigned the IPG as well. So I'm going to click on submit, and interface profile is created for me. Now, what is the next step? Going back to here, so I know what interfaces, but I don't know which switches this interface belongs to. Now, this is a port channel, so it belongs to only one leaf. If it was a virtual port channel, then I would go with 2 leaves, okay? So let's go to switches and select the profile. So here is the leaf interfaces. I'm going to close this, close this and go up to switches, open switches, and this is for leaf switches. And here again I have something like a profile for switch. So I'm going to right click on that, click create leaf profile. That leaf is going to be, let's say, L1 to Win server. Okay, so that's going to be this, or I can just select a better name for that, but that's okay. So I'm going to click on this leaf selector. That's an extra object again. I'm going to choose the same name here. This is just a name, doesn't really matter. Or I can just say this is leaf 1, L1. And for the blocks, I'm going to click on this and say this is just leaf 1. So I select leaf 1, click somewhere, and I'm going to update that. By updating this, this is going to, you know, be created. So next is going to be this, and it says what are the list of interfaces that you want to assign to this specific leaf for that port channel. So the interfaces is IP Win server. I'm going to select that. Do I want to have any module? No. I'm going to click on finish. Now that I have done this, most of the things have been done up to this part. Let's go to the second part of what I want to have. Do I have a VLAN pool already created, or do I want to create it right now? If you have already created that, that's okay. If you don't, you can just go to, if you haven't, you can just go to pools, and you can open this and go to VLANs, and you can see that there is a VLAN pool already created, but this is a dynamic allocation VLAN pool which dynamically assigns the VLANs to something like a VMware. VMware is going to use this range of VLANs. Here I need a physical one. So what I need to do is to right click on here, and I'm going to say create VLAN pool. And here what I'm going to say is static allocation, not dynamic allocation. Dynamic allocation, like I said, is for something like a vSwitch on a Hyper-V or VMware. So I'm going to say, let's say VLAN pool, and the name is going to be Win server, right? Like I said, the names are not so descriptive, but that's going to be okay. Now it says what are the block of VLANs that you're going to assign to this. I'm going to click on this plus sign, and I'm going to say, you can see that the type is VLAN. The range is from VLAN something to VLAN something. And I'm going to say VLAN, let's say 801 to 810 is going to be assigned to this Windows server. And here it says what is the allocation mode. Dynamic is you can see that this is a child of this this wizard page. This means that if it says static, then we can see inherit and static. Inherit means that whatever it is up there can be inherited here. I can just click on a static allocation or leave it to inherit, but let's say because I want to be super explicit, I just select a static allocation, and then I'm going to click on OK. So you can see the VLAN ranges from 801 to 810. So I'm going to click on submit. We have our VLAN range. The next step is going to create the domain. Let's go to here, and I'm going to close this one and close this one. To create a domain, we have something which is called physical and external domains. I'm going to open this, and you can see that we have different types of domains. Physical domain is the one that I want to have. L3 domain connects to a router which connects us to another L3 network. Fiber channel domain, of course, it's super explicit. You can easily understand what it is. An external bridge domain, which means that we are connected to a switch which is connected to an external LAN. Here I need to go with physical domain. So I right click on that, create a physical domain. And I'm going to say this is physical domain, and the domain is connected to Win server. So I have created this, and here we can have the attachable entity profile from here, but I'm going to create it later. So I'm going to say what VLAN pools are going to be assigned to this specific domain, which means here. The VLAN pool I just created was this VP Win server. So I'm going to select it. And do I want to have a security domain? No, for this I'm not going to have any. So I'm going to click on submit, and this part is done. And the last step is going to be creating the attachable access entity profile. So for that, I need to go to policies. From policies, you can have, let's say, global policies. I open this, and from here you can see attachable access entity profiles. So what I need to do is to right click on that and say create attachable access entity profile. I create something like AAEP Win server, and then I'm going to assign the domain to that. So the domain is going to be, by clicking on this plus sign, I can select the domain. The domain is this, and I can select an encapsulation for that. That's going to be okay. So I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to click on next. For now, I'm not having any application APG, so just click on next, and then it says, okay, I have the domain. What about the IPG, or interface policy group? Here you see that I said interface policy group is going to be glued to this domain using AAP. You remember that? So I just go to here. I would say, okay, this is the interfaces which I want to have. So I'm going to select all the interfaces which is under this IPG Win server. And then I'm going to go down and click on finish. So that's going to be the last step of creating a port channel on Cisco ACI. Now you would say, okay, why would we go through all this trouble just to create a port channel on Windows, on Cisco ACI? Most of the things that I did, you could have done it before, and you could just easily use those objects. For example, creating the VLAN pools, you could just create it before, and then you could have, use it in this profile that you just did. Most of the policies that I created here, for example, interface policies, you just create them in the beginning of the ACI initialization. So you just do it once, and then you just reuse those things. So that's not going to take something like 20 minutes as I have done right now. That's going to take something like 2 or 3 minutes. But still, you could say, of course, you could argue that creating a port channel using something like the configuration on CLI is going to be easier, which I agree 100%. But like I said, ACI is a new way of thinking, a new way of working, and that's full control over multiple leaves at the same time, multiple spines at the same time, multiple ports through the policy at the same time, and troubleshooting is going to be super easy because ACI just gives you something like health monitoring, and that health monitoring shows you if there is any problem. You can easily solve it. You can easily figure out what the solution is for that, and then work with that. I'm going to have more videos about ACI. If you have found it useful for you, don't forget to hit that like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to receive more videos from me.